Yeah, so I was born in Gujranwala, Pakistan, so I'm so very proud of that. But my father was with the bank and he was transferred to the UK. And so basically my upbringing was in Scotland, hence the accent. So about after I graduated, I worked a little bit in the UK, then I moved to Europe. I was in Holland, then I was in Vienna, Austria, then I moved to Far East, to Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and now I'm in Dubai. Yeah, so I did my undergraduate and masters in the UK, and I think that really influenced me quite significantly because of the training. I mean, UK degrees, I don't think they're a fun environment, more less so than the American system, but you go through the system very quickly. So I graduated with my bachelor's by 21 and masters by 23. So you're out of the system, qualified, ready for industry, whereas your European counterparts would have been maybe 4 or 5 years later. Well, I was very good in mathematics, and so it was either a question of engineering or accounting, and I didn't really want to go into accounting, so engineering was selected. But when you select your degree course or path, I was 17 at the time, it's basically a roll of the dice anyway, and then it's a question of what do you make out of it, and does it continue to interest you, and do you continue to have a passion for it? So I was actually working in the space sector, but I was specializing in risk, and I've been working with some consultants that also worked in ground transportation. This was in the late 90s, where the UK rail industry was suffering a lot of issues. And these consultants approached me with my knowledge and expertise in risk and safety, that could I come into their environment and help them, because the rail industry needed to move forward. There was a lot of safety case work to be done, and so I thought, let's have a go. So I did a lot of, originally I was with the European Space Agency, and then I went to one of their subcontractors based in Vienna and Austria. So I was working on space programs, experimentation primarily on the Mir space station. So that was a very interesting time, because I got to interact with astronauts and cosmonauts. And I also did one kind of side project, which was I hosted the International Space University in Vienna in '96. So that also was great for networking and putting me in touch with a much bigger community. But space it's a very interesting domain, because everything is one shot. You get one shot at a rocket, you get one shot when you're in space. So you have to get everything perfectly right, and that's why risk was such a big issue and had to be controlled. Well, I think the space industry gave me a lot of training, and particularly in systems approach to how we work. Aerospace, aviation, space, they're all very systematic, because the processes started to evolve back in the 50s. And those processes are now being used in different industries. And I think a lot of ground transportation the industry has also taken from that. So working in the ground transportation industry, it's very different, obviously. But I find the complexity within that ground transportation, typically a rail system is 30 to 40 different systems that have to work together, and then have to interact with passengers, the public, real-world protocols, environments. So it's very challenging, and I like that challenge, and I think the challenge is what keeps me moving forward. Well, risk, as soon as you take any form of system and start to move it, you have risk. As railway engineers, railway engineers often say that the safest form of a rail system is take the railway locomotive, weld it to the track, close the doors, and don't ever let any passengers on board. But that's not the real world. So in a real world, you have to start moving people. And as soon as you interface large moving scale infrastructure with the public, introduces risk. And when you multiply that with risk of metro systems, bus systems, taxi systems, even ferry systems, and now we're talking about air taxi systems, all of these risks combined add on. It's a very, very complex task for an authority like the RTA to manage that on a daily basis. So controlling, understanding your risk, because if you don't understand the risk, there's no action you're going to take to mitigate the risk. So that's the whole premise of risk management within the transport organization. Understand what the risks are, then put in the control measures, or try and eliminate them or reduce them to what is practical. Work-life balance is always a challenge, but I feel that if you have something interesting to do and there are people counting on you, then things naturally, there's tremendous pressure, obviously, because you have the organizational pressure, you have the commitment. Something like Expo operates more or less on a 24/7 basis, but generally transportation systems are 24/7. So the fact that we have those pressures doesn't mean that we can't live our normal lives as well. And your family also have to be very supportive, and luckily I do have that from my family, and understanding. But if you want to move forward, if you want to achieve something, generally I think in the world today, pressure is going to be there. It doesn't come without pressure. So be ready for that. If you want to be ambitious, if you want to succeed, pressure is going to be a natural part of that. Balancing, and then taking that time that you need and having that family time. I mean, it is a balance, but you can, if you're sensible, don't overstress yourself, but make sure you meet your commitments. Challenge. Every day is a challenge because it's a live environment, and as a live environment, what we find is that the public generally are not very forgiving, because people don't like to suffer congestion, they don't like to suffer delays, they don't like to suffer interrupted service, they don't want the degradation of quality of service. So all those factors are very important and always very important to maintain. So that challenge is there from every day, 24/7, because it's a 24/7 industry. And it's our job to meet that challenge, and it's our job to meet the public's expectations. I think one of the things I've learned is that anything worthwhile in life, it requires work. And if you're prepared to put in work and effort, you have a much higher chance of succeeding. And the work and effort is not just being academically the best, it helps, but when you get into real world working environments, you'll find that it's about what you contribute and what value proposition you bring to the job. What would I change in hindsight? I don't think anything. I mean, the clarity of hindsight is always interesting, but I've found in life, if you've made your decisions, you should stick with them. You should be able to justify why you did it, and you should move forward with those decisions in a positive way. I would say the biggest misconception is that the public views the industry as very simple. And simple in terms of, well, it's just a taxi or it's just a train. They don't see how much is behind that and how much time, planning, design goes into making a system viable. So when you introduce a new service, it literally takes years, because you have to think of everything from the customer interface to the operations to how we maintain to a life cycle of 30 to 40 years. So that's not an easy thing to do. And I think that misconception is there with the public, that it's just easy. Yeah, I think change, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example. Yes, there was examples where we were responding to emergency and crisis, and what I saw was that obviously the response time for the ambulance service was very critical. So when I moved in Dubai, and I was particularly living at this part of town, I realized that the ambulance service was not effective. I estimated it was at least 25-30 minute round trip. So because I was in touch with the ambulance people at the time, I made the suggestion, have you thought about this area, Dubai land, and how have you done the coverage for it? And then they reviewed it and they basically said, you're right. And then they decided to base ambulances in different parts of Dubai land to help with the response. Yes, I mean, that was one example, but generally at the Dubai level, there's huge collaboration at what they call Dubai crisis team level. So all the authorities work together in a very proactive way. So when we did, in the course of a year, the Dubai authorities would do many scenarios and crisis drills and training, and that will be a collaborative effort from all the blue light services and other departments. Because the only way to really handle crisis is if everyone works together in the smoothest integrated way with an integrated command and control infrastructure. that also means resources, equipment have to be available in the right place at the right time. So Dubai is amazing. It really, because that push comes from the very top, and this is why you don't see it as a public, because you just see the smooth service. But behind that, there's a huge amount of effort that's going on from Dubai authorities. I don't think there's a formula to being innovative. I think it's a reaction to, or it includes your lifestyle, it includes your background, your upbringing, your training, your education, your experiences. But for me personally, I think because I was always very much into science fiction and particularly Star Trek, so I could see from those programs that there's a lot of futuristic thinking. The science fiction writers actually predict 30, 40 years, even longer into the future. And because they're doing that, they also hit upon concepts and ideas like the communicator, which is our today's mobile phone system. You could see it in Star Trek in the mid-60s when the program first came out. Video tablets, iPads, it was all there. So these concepts, because science fiction writers are effectively futurists, and because they're thinking in that way, then they're imagining what could be. So I think you can get a lot of inspiration. I mean, a lot of people say think out of the box, but I think it's a bit more than just thinking out of the box. It's really trying to project and into the future. Yes, well, I mean, now I left the RTA at the end of 24, and then 25 I joined Glydways Inc., which is a US startup. So I'm now the managing director for Glydways in the region. And this is a new form of transit pod technology. And the founders came up with this concept because they looked at what was happening in urban cities around the world. And I think even the UN data estimates as urban centers, more than 12,000 urban centers with more than 5,000 people globally. So they were looking at what was happening with the introduction of autonomous technology in terms of the roads, the current road infrastructure, and increasingly all these urban centers, they're all suffering the same thing, congestion. Autonomy in itself in the road infrastructure is not solving it because not everything is autonomous. And that's a vision that's probably 40, 50 years away before we get to full autonomy. So they were looking at solutions for this, and they came up with this amazing idea for this new type of AI-driven pod technology, which is the core of the Glydways system. And we've been introducing that now in global markets. So we've set up in Dubai, Singapore, Tokyo. We have 7 offices also in the US. So it's a startup, but it's growing very rapidly. Well, they always say no risk, no fun. No, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but I think at the end of it, I felt that I could do something different, and I'd never done a startup environment. I'd always been in larger organizations. So this seemed like, for me at the time anyway, it seemed like a natural fit. It is more risky. Startups by inherently will be more risky. But I think once you've made, like I said earlier, if you've made a decision, if you've evaluated your risk, then you have to stick with it and you have to make it succeed. And I think it's easy to give up. It's much harder to make things happen. It's going to make people's life, it's an amazing ride experience. It's an origin to destination ride. So it's a bit like an Uber. When you get to we call it access points, not stations. When you get to the access points, you call your ride, and then when you get on, it's your personalized ride. It takes you directly to your location, so your time is fixed. You're not stopping like a metro or a bus at every stop. So it will give you a huge amount of convenience. The booking in itself is very convenient, and it will take away that, we hope, will take away that congestion issue. So what we're really looking to do is expand the Glydways system is based on what we call a mesh or network. So it's expandable into communities. It can connect to the metro system. It can replace even metro systems, high volume systems. So it's a very flexible system, and that scalability, we hope, will start to impact people's lives. Particularly if you look in Dubai, we have an amazing metro system, but we also recognize that it can't get to all the individual districts, and this would be a way to achieve that. Yeah, so the AI and the automation on the Glydways system, the unique IP in this is that we've been able to, a conventional road vehicle, or let's say a metro would have 90 seconds between one vehicle to the next vehicle, and that's because of safety reasons and how the signaling system works. Our vehicles, we've been able to reduce the distance down to 1 second. So at 50 kilometers an hour, you're going to be traveling 1 second apart, and the AI is orchestrating that with the automation, and therefore you can orchestrate more or less vehicles depending on the demand. So also environmentally, from a perspective, you're not having empty like a metro system or a bus system. Quite often during the day would have lower ridership, is off peak. Our system would be an on-demand system. So as you require, more vehicles come on and less vehicles when you don't. I think if you look at what's happening globally right now, there is a push for eco-friendly, but there's also a recognition that eco-friendly sometimes can cost more as well. So whereas organizations, especially in the transportation sector, are striving for that, you have to also get to viable solutions that work in these environments. But we've designed the system from the onset as an all-electric system, so it's carbon neutral, no emissions. And we believe that also because our civil infrastructure is much lighter, so you're pouring a lot less concrete than you would have to do for conventional metro systems. All of this will factor into the sustainability aspects. I think Pakistan, and I think the population is always ready. Pakistanis, I think, naturally are very creative people. I think they're I think globally you'll recognize Pakistanis are very intelligent people. So you can see examples where Pakistan just does things itself. A good one would be the adoption of solar power, whereas the rest of the world was kind of looking at it and meandering in terms of how to implement it. You can see in rural communities across Pakistan, in cities, people have been adopting solar power because it makes sense. They've been coming up with their own networks and their own solutions. So I think if you give Pakistanis that, open the door for them, everything is possible. And even these technologies, there's no reason why we cannot bring this technology to Pakistan. Compared to some of the stuff I've done previously, I don't feel the stress, to be honest. Yes, there's background stresses that are always there, but I mean, compared to the pressure of signing off on a metro system, a $10 billion investment, this is relatively easy. Pitching is also being made a lot easier because I felt the company was already very mature in terms of its marketing and business development. And we've already succeeded in 3 projects in the US, which have been fully signed and contracted. So that makes it a lot easier. The vehicle is available, it's on the test track. So again, that builds up the confidence. The client can come and see the vehicle, they can see it in operation. So I haven't felt so much pressure, to be honest, in that. We're always looking for public support, and we hope from the adoption, once the technology is introduced, the public support will come from taking the ride and accepting and liking it and giving a positive feedback. We will also at some time in the future go for IPO, so yes, the public can support by buying shares as well. I don't know when the exact date is for that, but that's the intent of the company. I think when I do interviews with young people, quite often there's this kind of feeling that, well, I've come out of university, I should be hired, and immediately I should go into some senior management position after 4 or 5 years. The reality is that medical sciences are improving all the time, so we're going to live a lot longer, well, young people especially. And because they're going to live a lot younger, the careers have gone from maybe a 30-35 year span to easily a 45 to 50 year span. So you're going to have to pace yourself. So if you're going to do that, then you have to think very strategically over the 50 years. You're going to have to think of your education, your qualifications, your continuing training. And it's not important to get to the top immediately, because once you're at the top, there's only one way down after that. So pace yourself, set yourself objectives. But qualifications, training, I think, I hear a lot of stuff about, well, it's not so important anymore, experience is more important. It's all important, but continuing professional development, I think, is very critical. And particularly if you're going to an engineering function, I think that's more so because the technology keeps moving and you need to move with it. Totally. I take great pride in being of Pakistani origin. I think your roots are very important, and this comes through from your parents, your wider family, and it impacts you in terms of how you approach situations, because I think Pakistani, to be honest, I think Pakistani upbringing makes you very tolerant. You're able to understand different societal levels, you're able to understand different religions, and I think we're more adept to adapting into real world scenarios, and I think that all came from Pakistani upbringing. Cultural pride, I think, is origins, and not forgetting your origins. And I think I see what a lot of Pakistanis do migrate to the West, there's this over importance in we need to adopt everything in that environment. The West is not asking you to do that. The West is asking you to accept the rules and regulations and work within those constraints, but it's not asking you to change your religion, it's not asking you to change your attitudes, and as long as you're peaceful, lawful, and that's what we were taught as from our Pakistani upbringing, you should be accepted. You don't have to go to the other extreme of being completely westernized. There are increasingly a lot of women in it. I think traditionally, because engineering tended to be a dour subject, and people, it's mathematics and it's physics, so it's not creative, shall we say. But I think more and more, and I would encourage more and more women engineers, and I think now I see a wide spectrum. It's true, it's still lagging a little bit, but there's a wide spectrum, and certainly a lot of women leaders are there and taking controlling positions. Apart from my mother and my wife, no. No, I mean, I've worked for women in leadership quite often, and I find that they're just the same as working with men. But I wouldn't say there's any specific instance. But I think women do pay a lot more attention to detail sometimes, and I think that does help in the work environment as well. And they're also, I think sometimes I've seen that they're better at diffusing situations, less ego in the room, I guess, sometimes. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great initiative. I mean, internships, training, development, I mean, it's what I talked about, continued professional development is critical. I think, I'd love to be able to give the opportunities, and as the company grows here, I think we will be looking for internships in the future. So yes, I would entertain that. And then as we go further, then who knows, it could be jobs and training. Because the idea is that as we set up in the Middle East, we want to have also Middle East recruitment, for people from this region to come into the company. And the markets, today we're in Dubai, the UAE, but the markets could also expand to the Sub-Indian continent very quickly. So I think there's lots of opportunities, but I think the young people have to also, shouldn't take it for granted. They should make the opportunity for themselves. They should get the right qualification. They should have the right CV ready. And one of the things I would say is do spend time on a CV. I see so many times, I see CVs with spelling mistakes, which haven't been structured properly. The dates are inconsistent. And then you're thinking, if you're not really paying attention to this, and how can you be paying attention to your career? There's no given right. Earn it. So in 2017, I was asked to take the lead on introducing a demonstration, which we used a volocopter vehicle at the time. We demonstrated this successfully to Dubai leadership. It got a lot of attention from world media, and then Dubai leadership gave a go-ahead to implement a project. So I was the project manager, and I was leading that before I left RTA for about 4 or 5 years. And I developed a consortium with Joby Aviation and Skyports. And so in 2026, the project will go, inshallah, it should go live in Dubai, and it will be the first application of an air taxi eVTOL service globally. Real life projects, how I tried to structure it was, we always structure projects this way wherever we are, that it's very important to have key people, but the project should continue and should not be held back if people leave or come. But it was a really interesting project to be engaged in that, and I think it's a tremendous thing that Dubai is doing to take the lead in that respect. I think it's still very risky, because the concept of space travel, there's a lot of, if you go back to the pre-Challenger incident, the space shuttle was being sold to the politicians as a highly reliable vehicle, the same as an aircraft. It was nowhere close to that. In fact, if you talk to, I think at the time of this Challenger, before the Challenger incident, there were more than 2,000 critical items that could lead to failure on that vehicle, which is nothing, you wouldn't have that on a conventional aircraft. So it's still going to be a very risky endeavor. And if you want to get on a rocket, remember it is a rocket. Once you have ignition, there's not a lot you can do to put it out. So I think people that do go into space are very brave people. They're very committed people. And I think space right now, I'd still say, is a domain of professionals rather than tourists. The riskiest mode of, well, apart from rockets, yeah, anything that's very customized or unique becomes risky, because you don't have production vehicles, you don't have, and they tend to have their own kind of certification environment. So forms of transport which are regulated by government authorities are the best, and they're going to be the safest. Forms of transport which are one-off, like it could be, I don't know, a new form of helicopter service or an individual pod, there are individual pods coming out now. These don't have that production capability, and they don't have that full kind of government regulatory capability. And some of them are actually unregulated because the government doesn't require regulation. There's types of gliders that can be flown if you want to fly them in the desert, and you're taking the risk. It's your call. Yeah. Well, as you get out of bed, you're introducing risk, because even if when you decide to step in the shower, you can slip. You get into the car, your tires are not inflated, something wrong with the vehicle, you can. So risk management, actually, as human beings, you're doing every day, minute by minute. You just don't call it risk management, but that's what you're doing. So, some people would argue even sleeping in bed is risky as well, because there's other medical issues that could occur. So managing risk is a natural part of how we live as humans. But when we get into a professional environment, it's being more structured about it, and it's capturing those, understanding those, and then putting these mitigation plans into place. So the riskiest part of everyday life, just living, I think, is just risky in itself. But that's what we were set up as human beings for. Yeah, well, the habit that I did have when I was with RTA is I used to get up at 5:30 and I'd be at work at 6:30 every morning, and I did that for 20 plus years. But I think habits that I see youngsters, bad habits I see, is that youngsters tend nowadays to take work very lightly, and work is a commitment, and it's a commitment to your employer, and it's also a commitment to yourself. So I'm old school, and if you're sick, you're sick, but things like sick days, and people call these quite often, these are bad habits. And you have deliverables. When you're not at work, someone else has got to pick up that work. That's the way I look at it. So if you make commitments in your job, live up to them.